As a medical provider, would you like a job where you can take off unlimited time? If you want to spend a month traveling in Europe or a couple months off taking care of a sick relative, you have total flexibility to do that. Or how about never having to work a holiday again? If you want to spend 3 weeks at Christmas with your family, you are perfectly able to do that and you don't have to ask anyone's permission. How about working in new and exciting places or meeting new people? How about doing all of that, making pretty good money? Well, if any of that sounds good to you, then you might consider working locums. Hi, my name is Michelle from the Medicine Couch, and I have worked locums for about the past 4 years. And today in this video, I'm going to break down kind of the nuts and bolts about locums. I'm going to give you the pros and cons and share a little bit about my experiences with you. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a good idea whether locums is right for you or not.
Hello! Welcome.
So for those of you who don't know, locums is basically the temps of the medical world. We fill in for medical providers who are gone from their practices for various reasons, whether it's vacation, illness, maternity or paternity leave. And we also fill in when clinics are experiencing higher need than normal and they are looking for a permanent provider but haven't found one. Sometimes clinics are just seasonal. They can't support a full-time provider year-round, but they need a provider working in the busy seasons. So those are some of the reasons why people hire locums. The way locums works is that the clinic or hospital, when they have the job, they will send the posting out to agencies. That job gets sent out to multiple agencies, so the different agencies will all be trying to fill the same position. And that competition is good for you, and I'll tell you why a little bit later. So the agencies will then take that position and they will post it and they will try their best to be the first agency to get that position filled, to get a good qualified candidate in front of the client. So when you answer an ad, the agency will learn a little bit about you and you'll kind of do a little mini interview with them and send them your resume and things. And then if they feel like you have the right experience and you meet the qualifications, then you'll usually do an interview, a phone interview with the client who's looking to staff just to make sure that you're the right fit and then they can answer all your questions about the clinic and satisfy you to make sure it's someplace you want to go. The agency is going to be paying you by the hour. They will advertise a rate. That rate is negotiable. A lot of people don't realize that. You know, say the agency is getting paid $100 an hour. I'm just picking a figure out of the air. So they get paid $100 an hour for all the hours that a provider is going to work on that job. Then they turn around and offer maybe like $65 an hour for the provider. So they obviously want to keep as much money and much of that difference as they can. But like I said, they also have the incentive to get that position filled. So you really have some negotiating room on that dollar figure and you can inch that up. For the most part, usually there's no benefits. And then that pay is usually either W-2 or 1099. Really depends on the agency and what they offer. We'll talk about the pros and cons of 1099 a little bit later. So for those of you who don't know, 1099 is you're an independent contractor. Basically, you're working for yourself and you will be responsible for paying all of the federal employment taxes and you'll have to make tax payments quarterly. But that's not that difficult and there are plenty of tax professionals that can help you with that. Now, just like any job, you have to have the correct state license for the job that you're applying for. So this would mean if you want to work in multiple states that you do have to maintain licenses in those states. The only exception to that would be is if you work federal jobs like Indian reservations or the Federal Prison Bureau, then any state license will work in those situations. But having said that, the locums companies will often reimburse you for your state license or help you get it in the first place if you have not already gotten it. They also sometimes help pay for DEA license or BLS or NCCPA certification or whatever fees that you have to pay in order to legally be able to work. A lot of times you can get that paid for by the agency. Now, the agencies also will make sure that you are completely covered with malpractice insurance. Really important that you get a copy of that certificate, make sure you're named on it, and keep that in your records. Additionally, they're going to pay for your travel, whether that's a plane ticket to where you're going and then a rental car, or paying you miles if you're going to be driving your own car. And then they will pay for your housing at the location that you're going to be working. So let's talk about that pay a little bit. Just to give you an idea of what locums pays, you can check the job listings and see, what they're putting out there and what they're advertising. I graduated in 2015 from PA school, and I usually work for about $65 an hour. Sometimes that's $10.99, sometimes that's W-2. But if you're working a lot and you are very flexible on places you'll go, you can certainly bump up that hourly wage. So there are locums jobs available in any of the specialties, but family practice, urgent care, emergency medicine, and occupational medicine are going to be the specialties that have the most opportunities to work locums. Locums assignments can last anywhere from a day to greater than a year. It really varies. The other thing to mention is that as a PA, I have filled in for other PAs, for NPs, and filled in for physicians many times. So there really is that flexibility there, which opens you up to even more job possibilities. So as we're going along, if you think of questions that I'm not addressing, please leave them below in the comment section. Also, if you've worked locums and want to chime in and add anything to the conversation, put that down below as well. So let's talk about some of those pros and cons. Creating your own schedule and having the time off whenever you want it is probably the greatest plus for working locums. That also can help cut down on burnout and feeling like you're in a rut all the time. And especially if you don't need to make the highest salary possible, you can really be flexible and work for a few months, take a month off, take a couple weeks off, whatever you need to regroup and refresh. Also, the change of scenery helps you with not getting in your head so much and not getting bogged down in office politics and the drudgery of an everyday practice. There are some challenges with stepping into somebody else's shoes, but because you're temporary, a lot of times it's easier and you don't have all the extraneous stuff to deal with that a permanent provider might. In addition to have that flexibility with time off, some providers work locums and then build another business in the meantime. You really have that flexibility of still making a good income, but being able to have the time to devote to other projects, either hobbies or building a business, what have you. You get the opportunity to experience what it's like living in different places around the country. Some people may work Alaska in the summertime and then work, Southern California or Florida in the wintertime. You really can find cool places to work. And with the agencies paying for your housing and your travel, then you can really live in some of those expensive cities like New York City or San Francisco without feeling the sting of having to pay those housing prices. So some people really love that and really like to explore the country. You also make lots of new friends, get exposed to what it's like to work in different kinds of offices. One month you may be working in a rural setting, and then another month you may be working smack dab in the heart of a big city. So you really get an idea of what it's like to work in different scenarios, which may help you if you're trying to figure out where you fit in medicine. Working 1099, you're an independent contractor, which means that you have your own business. So if you choose to work with an agency that pays you 1099, you do have some tax advantages there. You have to pay your own federal taxes, but you also can write off things like any health insurance that you're buying on your own, any other benefits that you're paying for, any CME that you have, any licenses or certifications that aren't being paid for by the agency, or any equipment that you need, if you need a new stethoscope or a new white coat, whatever it is that is a legitimate business expense, you can write it off. Now, I'm not a tax advisor, and I have to say, you do need to check with a tax professional if you're going to do this and make sure that your write-offs are legitimate and you're doing it correctly. But that is another way that you can maximize the money that you make by working locums. Now, there are obviously some cons. If you have a family, it's going to be difficult to work locums. There is a possibility to work locums locally, especially if you live in a big city, but you may not be able to work locums full-time if you want to stay local. You also obviously have to be somebody who's flexible. You have to be able to be set down in a new position and be able to figure things out fairly quickly. You have to feel confident in your skills. I wouldn't suggest locums for a brand new graduate. Probably need to have at least a year of experience in your particular specialty before you go out and work locums, because it's too hard to figure out a new practice, new computer system, all the things you have to figure out, plus learn how to practice medicine at the same time. So locums is best suited for those providers who feel more confident in their skills and who are flexible and adapt easily to new situations. As you can imagine, there are multiple computer systems that different clinics use, so that can be a disadvantage. But if you know Epic, that's what most people use, and so you'll have a lot of jobs and you'll already know how to use the computer system. But most jobs, if you aren't familiar with the computer system, they're going to give you some training when you first arrive on site, or they may have you do paper charting, or some other solution. And then once you work a couple different places and maybe you've learned Epic and Cerner or whatever, then you even have more flexibility in jobs that you take. You also can specify that you will only take jobs for companies that use Epic or whatever system you're familiar with. You have that flexibility as well. Constantly starting new assignments can be difficult as well. You have to learn the names of all the people you work with. You have to learn the processes in that particular clinic, where they refer people to, where they send people for x-rays and labs, all those things. But it's not insurmountable, and the staff is usually pretty good about helping out and telling you what you need to know. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of locums jobs don't offer benefits, so they may not give you health insurance, disability, or whatever. So you will have to line that up on your own. But there are some of the agencies that do offer those benefits, so you really have to kind of look and see. I worked for Comp Health and had their health insurance, and it was actually pretty good and fairly reasonably priced. Not only that, but after I ended my assignments with them, I was able to go on COBRA for the next 18 months. So even though I worked some assignments with other people, I still was able to have my health insurance. And finally, there is a lack of stability when you work locums. It's not like you have a permanent job that you'll have for the foreseeable future and have some confidence that that job is going to be there. You really don't know what the future holds when you're working locums, and you have to be prepared. There can be dry spells, may not be jobs available when you're looking, or maybe you haven't really been on the ball and haven't lined up an assignment following the assignment that you're currently on, and then you have a break of a couple of weeks where you're not getting paid. So that is hard for some people, and you have to be prepared for that. There's also the instability and the fact that an assignment may end. You do sign contracts, and they do have to give you a certain amount of notice that the job is ending, but that is always a possibility. The job could end because maybe they're not happy with your performance, or they didn't have quite the volume of patients they thought they were going to have, or maybe the provider that you're filling in for is coming back earlier than expected. Whatever, those things happen. But also, you have the ability to end the job early. So if you're you go to a place that you're supposed to work there for 3 months and you really don't like it and it's not the fit for you and you don't want to be there the 3 months, you also can give notice and get out of the job early. Normally, it's a 30-day notice for that, so they can get another provider in time. And finally, having multiple assignments and all the credentialing and paperwork with it and having malpractice certificates, you have to be pretty organized and keep some good records if you're going to work locums. So I told you I'd share a little bit about my experiences. I've not had any assignment that was really absolutely horrible that I felt I needed to get out of right away. Some assignments that weren't the greatest. One, I was filling in for a provider who was out for potential disciplinary action, and I was seeing her patient panel. The patients were on all kinds of opioids, really high doses. Many of them were on weight loss medications like phentermine for a long time. And, we're taking other medications with those that may have been contraindicated. And I had to kind of help clean that up a little bit. That was difficult. I could have avoided that situation if I would have asked more questions about why they were needing a provider before I accepted the assignment. I had another assignment that I was in kind of a really rural clinic and didn't realize that the local population used it as an emergency room. And we had people coming in that had been kicked in the head by a horse, and instead of going to the ER at the hospital, they came to the little clinic that we were at. So, and there was lots of those kind of situations. So I probably wasn't as prepared for that job as I needed to be. and I didn't realize that. I took an assignment for a family practice walk-in clinic. I didn't know that that was going to be that much. Again, if I would have asked more questions, I probably would have got a better understanding of what they needed and then would have passed on that position. So lesson there is that make sure you really find out all the details about the assignment you're going to take. I've had many assignments that were just okay, nothing great, but nothing really wrong with them. And then I've had some really good assignments. Probably my favorite was filling in at a family practice for a provider who was out for maternity leave. Really nice clinic. They had great staff, great doctor to work with. They used Epic. It was just a good situation, and I'm friends with people from that clinic to this day. I also got to work in some occupational medicine settings. I worked at an in-house clinic at a manufacturing facility, which was kind of new and unique. So I've gotten to see some kind of cool things, and certainly have worked in some really beautiful places. So that's a broad overview of what locums is like. Hopefully it's given you an idea of whether it's something that may be right for you or something that you want to look into a little further. If it is, I would encourage you to go to websites of the big locums companies, or maybe look on forums and read the experiences of other people who have worked locums, and make that phone call and start talking to recruiters. They're very open to giving you information, and they're pretty great resources. In the future, I plan on having interviews with people who work locums in really exciting and different kind of jobs. And then also, of course, I'll have features on people who work permanently in the different medical specialties. If any of that seems interesting to you, please subscribe below, become part of this community, and join us here on the Medicine Couch. Until next time, stay sane out there. Bye.